Hey there, Kristen Walter with the Mountain Dream Team, coming to you today with a pretty important topic. I spend a lot of time educating people before they come up the mountain about this, and I've even had to help my own friends and family who have suffered from altitude sickness. Today, I'm going to do my best to explain to you about comfort and safety when coming to 9,800 feet, and sometimes our properties are above 10,000 feet. And of course, if you're skiing, you're at 14,000 feet sometimes. Stay tuned. Before I get going, you know I always ask you to click the like button, the subscribe button, share this with your friends. Go check me out on some of my other channels. I've got a lot of good stuff going on, and I'd love to connect with you wherever you like to be. Okay, now, if you're coming to us for the first time or even the second or third time, you know, coming to altitude is no easy feat. And I am originally from Houston, Texas. My parents still live in Sugar Land. I was there for the first 20 years of my life, or 18, and then I went to Austin for school. So I have a good perspective on going from sea level up to 50 to 80 feet in Denver, where I was for 7 years, and then moving farther up the mountain, living at around 9,000 feet, and then going skiing 14,000 feet. So I've got a good perspective, and I want to share with you everything that I've learned as quickly as I can so that your visit here and your stay here is comfortable, because I promise you, you can do it, but you do need to consider these things before you come. So the first thing to consider is that our mountains are taller than many skyscrapers. If you're coming from Houston, Dallas, New York, San Francisco, I know it's really hard to imagine, but our mountains are taller than your buildings downtown. It's crazy to think about. It's unbelievable once you get here. Well, what does that exactly mean for you when you're thinking about buying real estate? What it means is what I call the shady parts of town. So when I first moved to Keystone, I lived in a little spot at the back of the resort. What I didn't realize was I lived in one of the coldest parts of Keystone, and that the sun went down behind the mountain where I was living, where my house was, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon during the winter. So you can imagine, it was really cold in the winter. There's some spots all over the county that are like this, that don't get a lot of daylight hours. So I call those the shady parts of town. If it's important to you to have a lot of sunlight, if you're someone who feels like you don't want to be cold all the time, or you're just worried about the amount of daylight hours that a property will get, you need to tell us. You need to say, hey, don't put me in a shady part of town. Don't put me in between a valley where there's two huge mountains where I get like 4 hours of sunlight during the winter. I need more sunlight, I need more warmth. So that's something you really need to think about when you're coming to altitude. There's so much that goes into this part too, and we talk about it when we take you out on property tours, is we talk to you about how the properties are situated. So we talk to you about if the driveway has a southern exposure, which is a good thing, right? You want the driveway to be on the south or the west part of the property so that the ice and the snow melt a lot quicker. So we really are going to help you with this perspective of the coldness and the sunshine and the way that the property sits, and if it's in a shady part of town. Now, the other thing that is super important to consider, I don't want to freak you out, but I'm going to prepare you for it so that you don't experience it, hopefully, maybe not, when you get here, is altitude sickness. You might not have even heard of this, but it's a thing. I know some of you are bakers and you love to bake, and you know that there's always an altitude instruction on the box. Well, these are my instructions for you for your human body when you come to altitude. Altitude sickness can present itself in, for me personally, I get major headaches. So that's right, if I leave altitude and I come back and I haven't done the things I'm about to tell you about, I will get an awful headache. And as someone who occasionally experiences migraines, it's totally different from my migraines, but it can trigger migraines. So altitude sickness can also affect people make them feel nauseous. It can make them pass out. I actually blacked out one time at altitude when I took the train up to Pikes Peak down in Colorado Springs, and I ran through the gift store to go to the bathroom after all the hot chocolate that I drank, and I sat down to go to the bathroom and I blacked out for a minute. The other way that altitude sickness can affect people is it makes you feel really tired. And then sometimes, for those of you who are on prescription medication, it can affect you in different ways. And so you guys know I'm not a doctor. I'm only telling you stuff from my experience. You need to call your doctor before you come here, because our lowest point in the county, our lowest elevation north of Silverthorne is 7,500 feet. So we're higher than Denver. A lot of times what I tell people is before you come to Summit County, maybe consider spending a night in Denver so that you can get that feel of the 5,280 feet, the mile-high city, before you even come up the mountain. That is a great way to try to acclimate. The other thing I can tell you about altitude sickness is really, it is no joke. If you come here and you're not prepared and you do wrong things, you could die from it. It is no joke. So that's why you need to call your doctor. One of the funniest things that I've ever heard is that people say, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm not gonna get altitude sickness. And I'm gonna tell you, there is no science, and there's been nothing in my experience to show me that the bigger they are, the harder they fall, or the younger they are, or the more obese, or the person that drinks more or smokes more weed. None of that stuff. Altitude sickness affects some people and it doesn't affect other people. For example, when my parents have come to visit, my mom has 0 effects. My dad, he gets altitude sickness. You just never know. There's studies being done about it. There's actually a doctor in Frisco working on it, in Frisco, Colorado. So don't make any sort of generalizations about what a health nut you are versus your aptitude, or versus your likelihood for getting altitude sickness when you come here. Because I promise you, there's no way to be able to predict it. Either you're gonna have it or you're not. But there are ways, I think, to help you. And there have been studies and there are scientific medical journals out there and articles, but I'm gonna just tell you again from my experience what I've seen on how to avoid as much altitude sickness as possible. So sorry to tell you guys, but before you visit, you need to limit your alcohol and your coffee intake for at least 24 hours, because being dehydrated is gonna be a huge, huge problem if you come up to altitude. Seriously, get on the plane, order decaf tea, order orange juice, apple juice, your La Croix sparkling water, but lay off the coffee, lay off the drinks if you're worried about this. Like I said before, call your doctor if you're on any type of medications, especially your blood pressure medications. The other thing that you can do before you leave is you can ask your doctor for prescription for oxygen. And that way, if you get here and you need it, you have the prescription, and typically your insurance or Medicare will pay for that. And we have a lot of private companies here that have oxygen machines that will deliver them to your vacation home when you call. And if you have that prescription on hand, it makes it a lot easier when it comes to the payment portion of it. Now again, I'm not a doctor, but this is something that one of my friends has done. You can also talk to your doctor about a prescription medication called Diamox, and the generic name is acetazolamide. Again, I'm not a doctor, and these prescriptions do have counterindications with other prescriptions, but it's something you can ask your doctor about before you leave your hometown. I said it before you visit. The next tip I have for you is just to consider a night in Denver before you come up the mountain. If you're truly worried about it, or you're thinking you're gonna be dehydrated, or you wanna party like a rock star, or whatever, consider just staying down by the airport for a night or two. There's plenty of wonderful places, and Denver is a fun, fun town. and then that'll make it a lot easier for you to drive up the next day. The last part to tell you before you visit is to check out your CPAP machine, because a lot of times when people come up with their CPAP machine, it breaks. So make sure you've got extras or spare parts or whatever, but for some reason, and again, not a doctor, I don't have a CPAP machine, I just know a ton of my friends have come up, and when they come up, the darn thing breaks, and we don't have all the different places nearby like we do down in Houston to go pick up that broken part. So plan for that and see if you can, again, ask your medical provider, what can you do? What can they do for you if for some reason your CPAP machine breaks when you're at altitude? Can they send you with a second one? Can they send you with some pieces and parts? But just be ready for that in case that it happens. Now, that's all to prepare yourself before you visit. Again, I'm not telling you this stuff to freak you out. I'm telling you this because you're coming to a rural area. You're coming from a huge city that has a ton of everything that you could probably call someone, a delivery service to bring you your CPAP machine part from, 30 minutes away in the city. We don't have that stuff up the mountain. So I'm just trying to prepare you so that when you get here, you can have fun. Now, once you do get here, it's kind of the same stuff, you guys. Try not to party like a rock star. Try not to drink too much alcohol. People love to smoke marijuana when they come to Colorado, but that is something that if you get blown out of your mind, or even you take a couple of tokes off that really good marijuana weed, it could kick you into altitude sickness if you're not careful, if you're not hydrated, if you're predisposed, or whatever it is that causes it. You need to be so careful. So my advice is just to take it slow and easy, I've seen people go out and shred the gnar all day. They're like skiing like crazy, and then they go get in the hot tub and they want to kick back and have a beer and smoke a joint, and then boom, altitude sickness. It's like, oh man, talk about a party killer. We don't want that happening to you. So the first night or two that you're here, just take it easy. The other thing while you're here, make sure you eat well. I've seen a lot of people that just crash because obviously they're not eating enough, they're skiing more, they're exercising more, they're not getting the calories that they need. Just eat well and stay on a regular schedule and keep your snacks nearby. The couple times that I've almost passed out from altitude sickness, it kind of felt a little bit the way that it felt after I gave blood. And so, after you give blood, they tell you to eat, snacks and drink sugar. So, I think it helps. So just make sure that when you're here, you've always got food and you're not waiting till the last minute to try to get into a restaurant that has a 1 hour wait and you're depending on that food. Make sure you get plenty of rest. Again, the CPAP machine if you need it, but more rest than usual can also help with altitude sickness. Okay, before I get to my last tip on how to stay safe at altitude and stay comfortable, please make sure you comment below. Let me know what tips I missed. Let me know, do you get altitude sickness? And if you did, what did you do to help yourself? The last tip I have for you is, I already kind of talked about it when I talked about drinking and smoking, but with anything that you're doing in the county or in the mountains of Colorado, if it's hiking, biking, skiing, boating, fishing, birding, shooting, hunting, all the stuff that we do outdoors, take it slow and easy. I know some of you guys, you're big and you're tough and you come here from Texas and you're ready to hunt and you're ready to go pack an elk out of the backwoods, and you've got 200 pounds of elk strapped to your back, and then boom, you can't get the thing out of the woods because of altitude sickness. You gotta take it slow and easy, guys. One of my cousins that came up, he also found this powder that you can mix into your drinks. He got it at the convenience store and he swears by it. You can also get little tiny cans of oxygen at the convenience store. People swear by that too. I can't really assure you that those things actually work, but I say, if it's harmless, try it. And if it works for you, it works for you. That's all I have for you today. Don't be afraid of altitude sickness, but be aware. Know that it exists. Know that it happens. Know that you can get over it. And just prepare yourself the best that you can. And I promise you, you're gonna have a great time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the mountains.